dear all, for inviting me, having me to this interesting topic, dear all at home. Welcome to the stage here. It's a fantastic place to talk about the future of regional development and industry, and especially creative industries. And at the beginning, you have been speaking of those places as post-industrial places. I think here we see already how much we have to change our mindset. Those are future places. Post-industry is always, industrial change is here for the future. And so with this perspective, I thought I talk about creativity for change and change for creativity as a bigger mindset where this kind of change is taking place. I will take you along a few chapters to better understand this wider framework of creativity for change and the other way around, the changing which is happening with creativity itself. And one of those very first changes has been talked about at the very beginning, but I just want to raise awareness again what COVID really meant. It has been a tremendous loss. You have been talking about the situation. Are we in the central part? We are alive but are not living. But here you see in economic terms what the setback has been. At the same time, rebuilding those sectors now will be also a chance to innovate and to rebuild differently and to rebuild better. That's one of the big phrases of the European Union, where they also put a lot of really billions and trillions, 1.8 trillion into rebuilding better. And also creative industries is part of this big investment of the European Union. We made a survey with our creative business network, and we came up to the staggering amount of something between 6 and 7 billion euros, which are allocated in the next generation funds of the European Union on a national level. So this fund is not allocated in one place, but scattered around. This has advantages, it is closer to the sectors, to the needs of the nations, but on the other hand, difficult to mine and to harvest because it's fragmented. But so see COVID really as a chance for change, pushing forward this creativity. This especially amounts to Eastern Europe, as you see here, which have been hit most, with up to 44%. On the other hand, those nations have been one of the most growing in the creative industries, by far outgrowing Germany, Italy, France, and if I may dare say, even here, Netherlands, Belgium. We are, so to speak, the old markets, not growing so quickly. This is one of the latest publications done by the European Investment Fund. And here is the message, not only the different figures, how much the decrease has been, but really who has been doing this. It's the very first time since I can remember ever that the European Investment Fund is doing this kind of market research. Usually the European Investment Fund goes for, the classical sectors, food, fintech, logistics, steel, construction. But here it has taken a look into our sector, and that shows again that this crisis is not only a reason for sadness and disaster, but also for restart. So when we are restarting, what is this we? Talking about culture, creative industries, it's important not only to understand our point in time, but our identity. And this identity has been changing over the last 15 years. The very first report on the creative industries was done 2008 by Barroso. He put it on the agenda at that time, and he called it the economy of culture. And since then, our phrases and our definitions have changed quite a lot, from the cultural sectors over the arts, culture, creative industries, the cultural creative sectors. And each time a new commission or a new government came into place, they often made a new study and came up with a new definition of our sector. So one of the conclusions, I think, is that we have to see, and we have to work all together for this, that our sector really grows up to the fact to phrase its own science-based definition, not policy-based definition. It's not correct to change our phrases and definitions every 4 or 5 years. We are a sector of 9 million workers, 600 billion turnover. We outperform automotive, ICT, and all those sectors have their own research institutes. And seeing here this campus, I think I feel inspired again to say we really need our own research units and definitions on our own universities doing this. So that's the point where we stand in our self-understanding. Dynamic, yes, but not really self-assuring, and we still have to stand our ground and define ourselves better. That's, I think, something we have to do ourselves, not to hand this over to policy again. But talking of policy, where do our sectors stand in policy? How is policy looking at our sectors? That's the third topic here. Well, I now take out certain points in time of this understanding and policy which specifically relate to creative industries with other sectors, if it's regional development or if it's a wider economy or also the society. The very first point in time was 2012. This is 4 years after the first report in 2008 was issued. At that time, one was speaking of the spillover effects. This term came up in this communication promoting culture and creative sectors for growth. And this was not a scientific term. There was no definition. There was not hardly research on it, but it was a policy phrase highlighting that the benefits of creative industries in other sectors might be even larger than the sector itself, question mark. With the European Creative Business Network, we then created a European Research Alliance with several partners, with Nesta, Arts Council England, some 20 partners, to research and to understand what could be a spillover effect. They brought you this little overview here from a 100-page study. So if you're interested in this, have a look. But the basic message is there are 3 types of spillover. It's around knowledge, it's about industry, and it's about network spillover. And a project like this here, while you are maybe constructing value for specific regions or regional developments, I think the network effects within those activities here might be even larger and more long-lasting than the deliverables of the projects you have. It took another 7 years for the Commission, especially its General Directorate for Growth, to look into this more specifically. Again, it was policy motivated, and they were asking this question, well, how big now is, in terms of jobs and growth, this spillover effect? And that's one of the key visuals here I took out of this report from 2019. There are really rare reports. Mostly they are around design, and Tami has not focused so much on design and its overarching power by accident, because in fact design is a little bit of the conveyor belt of the creative industries, taking our sector across domains and across value chains and industry sectors. And here you see this amazing relation. CCSI provides some 12 million jobs. According to some statistics, other statistics come up with 9 million jobs, but here it's not about the number itself, but the magnitude. On the right side, you see it's 33 million jobs outside of the creative industries. And all those jobs and those industries are not here today. We are still talking kind of to ourselves. So that would be one of the next tasks we have to do, how to move over to those industries, companies and other jobs we create with our creativity. The next spillover I want to focus on is closer to your development, to your topic here, the regional development. And this was a topic up even on the G20 meeting this year in Italy on the relation of creative industries and regional development. And I took this out of a report in 2019, showing you already that some 90 regions in Europe, out of I think 240 or 250, adopted this on a strategy level. However, we miss really hard facts data. We all know a strategy is easily done. could be also easily done. So what is really the result? And that could be another research field for the future to look what are the economic outputs of those 90 regions adopting CCSI as a strategy. So here you see now how creative industries is positioned within the policy arena and how it developed from 2012, 19, along different perceptions, the spillover effect in other sectors, but also in the regional development. So having taken this look back, let us take a look forward. Where do we go now? What's the question now? And it's so important to really be aware, what do you ask? Because this will decide what answers you get. And only if you ask the right questions, you're getting and moving forward into the question, into the future. So I want to really promote the idea to ask differently, not what is our sector, but what is our sector doing for the recovery in from COVID-19? What is it doing for the climate change? What is it doing also for what is called the VUCA world? You might know this, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguous world. Our morning of Ukraine this morning is exactly this example. Who would ever expected this some months ago or years ago? And so what will creative industries do to make us more resilient to sudden changes, especially as climate crisis and maybe even climate migration and wars are still ahead of us? So the future will not be easier, but it will be more agile and difficult. I took the very first glimpse what creative industries can do for the future, especially now for your field. Of course, there are many fields to touch. And creative industries and rural development have a history from what we would today would call the old-fashioned Guggenheim effect, taking famous names, big brands, big buildings, invest 200 millions, and then you can be sure to have a global effect. But today, hardly any city has 200 millions. And even if they had, like in Hamburg for the Elbphilharmonie, they had 900 million, they they never planned that. They had it by accident. They had to have it because it's getting more and more expensive. So regional development and creative industries moved to different tools. And one of those tools was around the Zeche Zollverein in 2010, where I was a vice director at the European Capital of Culture at that time, where rural development in creative industries was done grassroots with small projects, 15,000, 50,000, and it was more an informal development on the planning level, on the grassroots level, on the citizen collaboration level. It was not about big investments. Now I read from your documents today which you filed for this conference, and I think Christoph was one of the authors being there, that you're thinking about the next phase of this development, going beyond blueprints, looking into the experimentations with prototyping facilities. And I would add, from the debate we see across Europe, looking at the skills development to do regional development. So what are creative skills for urban planning? What are creative skills for urban planners? It's not only being able to go digital, what they now do all with BIMI and so forth, but this kind of questions are, I think, the future questions, and I really favor also your approach to say go beyond blueprints. So you could say the relation of creative industries and regional development is going from hard investment into soft power, into skills. Though I have to say, I don't really like this phrase. I think skills is the real hard power. Cash is, in the end, big and easy to see when you see the Guggenheim Museum, but in effect, that's just the soft thing, I believe. So I want to encourage you to look more deeply into this prototyping and skills development. At the G20, I had cited already, this was the big topic, really looking into the content economy, into the potential of culture and cultural heritage, and to combine this especially with the regional development. So the topics you are debating here has reached the global agenda just last year. And this will not have been so by accident, because we see that many cities are exactly coping with these questions. You know, as industries are changing now more and more often, regional development has to change more and more often. So there is a speed up cycle, I think, and that's what you see in many cities around the world, and that's why the G20 has taken up this topic. So we had a look at what's taking place in regional development in the future. Let's take a look what is happening around industrial change. I have been asked to look a little bit into this production-based economy, into the service economy. And of course, as Tami has pointed out, it is all about design. And I brought you here Tim Brown, one of the leading design thinkers and leading companies for design and change management by design. Design thinking is a human-centered approach to innovation. And you said it here at the beginning also, I think your colleague from Chemnitz, that one of your next topics, it's not maybe creativity in regional development, but innovation and regional development. And that would be really in line with the latest developments. This phrase from Tim Brown, design and innovation, what does it really mean in detail? And the Commission here in 2019 also broke this up in different elements of design, a different rhythm to what Tami presented. But you see here again, there's a value chain of design creating new markets, new opportunities. And at the end, it's about the source of competitive advantage around designing data, designing big data. And I think that's also something relevant for regional development. What do we really know about inhabitants moving around in the region? What are their interests, and how does this result in consumption or even in mobility? So big data and regional development, designing this big data and thus designing regional development is one of the things you can take from this latest industry developments. But those industry developments also lead to new economies and new sectors, which you might want to take into your regional development. So if you plan for a region or a city today, you have to make a forecast what is coming up in the next 10 or 15 years. So it's obviously the green economy. Not so obvious, but now also a buzzword is the circular economy. Others might call it the donut economy. And if you really want to know the latest and top-notch developments on this, have a look at the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in London. They are doing the Circular Economy Summit. And there you meet the latest, I think, really best innovative developments around the globe on circular economy. That's why I cited this, an economy that is restorative and regenerative by design. It moves from a service design to designing futures into systems design. And I think systems design is also a good short term for what regional development will be in the future, not only designing the planning side of regional development, but having a really holistic view on regional development, seeing the region as a complete system, not only as an economic system, but also as a social system, cultural system, and most of all, a system changing. So that would mean, how do you design change in such a system? One of those major difficulties to design change in complex systems is how to really take along the community, how to take along the companies, the population, how to explain where we want to be in 10 or 15 years. Some 30 years ago, this was much easier. You said you were building a new site like Zeche Zollverein or Guggenheim. This was visible sites, orientations, like big brands. But the next phase of change is much more complex. It's much more about micro organisms. We know that 90% of the companies in Europe, the backbone of our economy, are small. So how do you take 90% of all those actors along and bring them into a new value chain? And that kind of similar on the same level of development in time. And my thesis, and I really say thesis, is to do this in the future, we really need to use this capacity of big data to our own creativity to design and visualize futures. So the trend of digital twins, which is now applied to many technological fields in IT and IoT, why not design and use this tool of the digital twin also for our cultural habits and cultural movements and traits? You know, you have more than 400 million visitors in cultural spaces every year in Europe. Yeah, almost 500 million. So culture is making people move and buy and do economic relevant things. And this, so far, is not in the focus of digital twins. And here again, I think a new technology is developed, and most of all looking to the traditional sectors, why I would claim, you know, you have to look into this modern sector of the creative industries, apply digital twins, do simulations and projections. And in order to understand this big data, you need to visualize it. And then there's a interesting circle. To visualize data on that side, of course, you again need tech. You need unbelievable high tech in order to calculate this. One of those supercomputers you need to do visualization on big data of cultural creative sectors is positioned in Stuttgart. It is HLIS. And they even have a media solution center to combine creative industries and this supercomputing power for our sector. Quite a unique combination. And I hope I could motivate you a little bit to look into your region where you could do this. There are some 30 supercomputers all over Europe. We are currently speaking with Supercomputer Center in Bologna to take up similar ideas. And maybe this would be a glimpse to the future of industry, because, you know, this is ICT industry. And they see creative industries as a market to harvest. But of course, we as creative industries also see ICT as a method to harvest their tech capacity and to put it into more relevance of our sector and the development of, well, that's what it's all about, the region, the city, the urban transformation. You started this with your glimpse that this project might be in the future on innovation, and that's also my last topic I want to conclude with. So not by accident, probably. So seeing this tech capacities, seeing our need to visualize, I had a look into a few examples, and I dare to say, to call those projects Da Vinci projects, because they combine really tech and creativity on a new level. I cannot go into detail, but just look this up. Carlo Ratti is as much an architectural inventor as he is a technological master, coming up with new materials, really fantastic. And he has a pavilion now in Dubai where he presents those new architectural and technological innovations. Oops. Another Da Vinci of our time is Bjarke Ingels, the Bjarke Ingels Group, which not only look into new materials, but also new business models of how to run urban development, new social models for buildings. They combine complete new uses in buildings. And here on the right-hand side, you see New York. After the Hurricane Sandy, they reinvented what a flood prevention could be in the future. They invented a flood prevention, which basically is also a nice living space and bringing together, which is usually separated in our social life. Last but not least, a very different type of Da Vinci, the gaming industry. 2.5 billion gamers are around the globe. So that's quite a big community. Just imagine if this community would focus on the topic of climate change. If they would focus to plant trees the size of America, to really stop the warming of our planet. And just imagine that there is a small company in Munich who devotes to do this. And that's exactly what happened here. Started at the Gamescom last year, setting up a platform where gamers can buy in gaming, what they love to do anyway, trees and help shrink the carbon footprint of all our activities. Just a new project. And it's just an example of what would happen if our sectors answers this question, not what are we, but what are we good for? What can we do in all those transitions which are up there? And that's not only having more green buildings, but also putting our cultural fun. And gaming is fun. It's an industry, but people do it because they love it. And to combine this passion and this energy with the good for the world, I think that's one of the biggest chances we can have. To do all this, to combine the private passion, the company passion, and the public good, is not happening by accident. Systems are designed to perform this combination of the private passion, the company passion, and the public good. And we have to be fair to say that our governments and social systems are not always the best to bring those three elements together, the private, the corporates, and the public. And for this reason, the World Economic Forum took up this topic in their agenda this year and said one of the biggest bottlenecks to innovation is that we do not bring together those three elements, the private, the corporate, and the public, in the best way. And one of the most leading researchers in innovation, Professor Matsukato, was commissioned to research this. And I just took out this glimpse quote here to highlight this for you, especially as I see your partnerships here in this project, bringing together public and private and grassroots partners, the students which are here, the city, the university which is here, the company which is here. This is an example how to frame those partnerships. And it's at the same time one of the biggest challenges we have to really redesign. We need design thinking for our public organization to unlock really the next level of innovation. That's not an easy task I leave with you, but I hope I could motivate to take it up with passion. It's the one which is at hand now, and I hope I could show you with Carlo Ratti, but also with the Games Forest, that this kind of theoretical innovation we have to do, because this is an innovation behind the scenes. It's kind of the boring thing you have to negotiate with public officials. But once it's done, it really unleashes those fascinating things like the Games Forest. Thanks for having me again, and I wish you a very good day and conference. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you to both keynotes for leading the way to the next part of the conference with their insights. In the upcoming panel talk, we will discuss and focus on one of the key outputs of the Indo-CCI project. I'm talking about a manual, a policy manual with 14 recommendations to promote cultural and creative industries as a catalyst in Europe. And the author of the manual, Christoph Schreckenberg, is a long-leading expert and consultant for CCI on that topic. And he sketches the highlights of the manual with us, for us in a video message.
Yeah, hello everybody, and welcome to the presentation of our Indo-CCI transnational policy paper with the title Wisdom of Place. My name is Christoph Schreckenberg, and I had the pleasure to write that paper. And and I would like to give you a little introduction how we did that. Let's have a small look inside. When you open up the paper, well, you see the index with the different chapters consisting of the different recommendations and also an introduction with our approach. Well, how did we do this? What was our approach? Well, first of all, we did international desk research about all kinds of studies. We incorporated the regional policy papers written by the partners and also presented intermediate results of the paper in discussion rounds online with the project partners to see how we would go on. And the idea was to create a hands-on smart guide for decision makers and CCI lobbyists. And how did we get there? We first started with a predecessor project, IndoCult 2.0, dealing with new industrial culture in Central Europe. And we thought we'd pick up their philosophy and terminology to go on, consisting of looking at a holistic perspective, a quadruple helix approach, a broad innovation definition that goes beyond technology, and a broad understanding of industrial culture, which consists of tangible material elements and as well intangible non-material elements. And it relates to the industrial production in the past, present, and future. And you can describe it as a societal concept, a transdisciplinary approach, a place-bound cultural setting, a concentration of specific expertise, attitudes, values, and traditions. And it's grounded in specific institutionalized routines of industrial structures, their incorporated conventions, beliefs, and production patterns, and interlinked social factors beyond the factory itself. Well, when I first suggested the title, actually, I got some reactions from our project partners that were somehow like this. And they probably thought, well, what kind of drug did he take? What did he smoke? Whatever. But actually, I was inspired by a saying of the Lakota natives, which says, wisdom lives in places. And I thought that captures also the human side of innovation, and we can catch that. Even it's not that European, one has to say, so it's a different source. But being the correct German, of course, you write a definition. Wisdom of place is rooted in tangible heritage, its inherent spirit, but even more in the people living there and the histories they tell, growing through the talents they show. And of course, we apply this concept specifically for industrial regions in Central Europe. We came up with 14 policy recommendations. Actually, the first one, the relevance is proven and deliver, we get in detail, but that has the quality of a statement. The one that has the quality of a statement, display fair from the bottom up. And apart from that, we can actually cluster or group the different recommendations. So the first three ones, you could say, prepare your ground or preparing the ground for further developments. The second ones concentrate on building bridges and networks. The next cluster is about giving room to go beyond. And the last one is promote profession and training. There were some things that we did not want to, actually. We did not want to get lost in semantic hell and technology domination. No. We did not want to constantly justify and argue why CCI, why creative industries are important. No. We did not want to theoretically discuss indicators and measurements of CCI innovation that can be done in other places. And we did not want to theoretically discuss about measurements of spillovers or the effects of cross-innovation. Let's go back to the overview, 3.1, the basic statement. CCI relevance is proven, establish visibility, create awareness, provide adequate funding, deliver. So this comes from a self-confident attitude, saying limit the space of delaying tactics of other interest groups, and have an eye on it that the fundraisers of the EU for the cultural and creative industries are adequate in the long run. Now let's look for preparing the ground. Let's pick out one or the other recommendation. We can't pick out all the ones and describe them. That would be too long. Here, prepare your ground. Use the regional industrial imprint as a starting point for desirable, meaningful innovation related to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, include issues of resilience. Well, this is a long one, but at least we wanted to formulate it in a way that you really understand what's meant. And of course, we talk about it to activate the specific milieu of the old industrialized regions and to reactivate a kind of pioneer spirits for nowadays challenges. Now go for the next cluster here, for the next group, build bridges and networks. So kick off initiatives of networked innovation, interpret problems as opportunities for pull innovations, fuel cross and open innovation through a multi-stakeholder approach, and position agents of the CCI as innovation catalysts who are able to create change. We have 5 recommendations that we took from the policy learning platform on research and innovation. The first one is use social network analysis to map network interactions, structure innovation networks around societal challenges, create information systems for these innovation networks, build innovation infrastructure to promote the informal networking opportunities, but also create innovation networks around the so-called S3 priorities that deal with smart specialization. Next point, give room to go beyond. So for this, we could take a look into the brochure itself. We are at 3.8 now, offer physical spaces for experiments. So we try to give some good practice examples. In the ebook, here we have Depot 2015 in Pilsen, and the Creative Incubator, which is actually an outcome of Pilsen Capital of Culture 2015. Or we have another project from Creative Saxony, working with workplaces in the countryside, connecting these places with each other and creating impulses through that and connecting activities. And of course, when we talk about giving room, it's the next point, giving mental room for experiments, 3.9. And this means you can give freedom to people, to allow them temporary exemptions, to allow innovation sabbaticals, to include silver innovators, to allow employees to spend a certain amount of their work time on their own project ideas, like 3M does, for example, and made them one of the most innovative and successful companies in the world. So this could be some aspects, or it could also be a funding program like the creative industry vouchers in Austria, where they give like small sums to SMEs, like 5,000 euro, and they can hire a service from the creative industries, all kinds of service, but it gives them the freedom to try something out that they wouldn't do otherwise, and creating a win-win situation between creative businesses and other industries. So this can also be an example to create this kind of mental room for experiments. Okay, let's move to the last chapter, and we're almost done. So let's check the promotion of professionalization and training. So these ones here from 3.11a to C are pretty self-explaining, basically also the good governments, but we want to pick that out in the end. So promote professionalization in the public sector, and I think that can help a lot on both sides when you try to collaborate with each other and look at things from each other's perspective to create mutual awareness and understanding, and expand the space of opportunities for both sides. So on the one hand, bureaucrats can learn from creatives through methods like design thinking and others, like how could we adapt our planning methods to become more flexible. And of course, then on the other hand, creative companies and creative industries can also profit from them if there's more flexibility in bureaucratic procedures and so on. So to move from a no because to a yes if culture, that's how Charles Landry calls it. And of course, that's another point where there might be moderators or agents of change needed to get these processes going and to develop them further. And yeah, if you're interested in that, maybe you visit the Creative Bureaucracy Festival. So the first online activities actually start today. And I think that's a pretty good approach. So thank you for today. Thanks for listening. That was a lot in a short time. Just a small reminder to finish. Perhaps you're in the mood to take a look at our IndoCCI e-toolbox also. And yeah, apart from that, here are our contacts. Feel free to contact us. It was a pleasure to present this to you. And I think, well, we're done for right now. And I hope to see you later on today here in Hasselt during the conference. Thanks.